days after Alexios discovered the truth about Marina's secret meetings with Lukas, the tension between the two grew unbearable. Alexios had spent many sleepless nights wrestling with his thoughts. The love he had for Marina was deep, but it seemed as though she no longer cared for him. Every time he looked into her eyes, he saw something unfamiliar, a distance he couldn't bridge. One afternoon, after returning from a long trip, Alexios entered their home to find Marina staring out the window again. Her beauty was undeniable, but it no longer filled him with warmth. Instead, he felt an ache in his chest, a feeling of loss he could not ignore. She turned to face him, a small, almost sad smile on her lips. "Alexios," she said softly, "you're back early." Alexios stood by the door, his heart heavy with the knowledge he had gained. "I heard from a neighbor that you've been spending time with Lukas. Why?" Marina's smile faltered, and she quickly looked away, avoiding his gaze. She felt a pang of guilt, but it was too late for regret. She had crossed a line, and she knew there was no going back now. I just needed someone to talk to," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "You've been gone so much, and I felt so alone." Alexios took a step toward her, his voice quiet but firm. "Alone? You've been with Lukas, Marina. You've betrayed me." Marina felt the weight of his words. The reality of what she had done hit her with full force. Her heart pounded in her chest as she searched for an excuse, something to make it right. But she knew deep down that there was nothing she could say to fix the broken trust between them. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "But I needed more than what we had. I needed something that made me feel alive." Alexios's expression softened for a moment, but then it hardened again. "I've worked my whole life for us, for you. And this is how you repay me?" The silence that followed felt suffocating. Alexios turned and walked toward the door. Marina reached out, her hand trembling. "Alexios, please," she begged. "Don't leave me." But it was too late. He didn't look back. Without a word, Alexios walked out of the house, leaving Marina alone in the quiet, empty space that once held the promise of their life together. In the days following Alexios's departure, Marina found herself in a spiral of confusion and despair. The house that had once been a sanctuary of wealth and comfort now felt cold and empty. The servants had all left, and the grand home now felt more like a prison. Her beauty, which had once been a source of power, now seemed meaningless without Alexios by her side. She spent her days wandering the empty rooms, unsure of what to do. The thrill of her affair with Lukas had faded, replaced by the bitter taste of regret. She had everything she had ever wanted: luxury, attention, and power. But it had all come crashing down in an instant. She decided to visit Lukas, hoping that he might offer her the comfort she so desperately needed. After all, he had been there for her when Alexios was absent, and he had treated her with a kindness that Alexios had never shown. Lukas was hesitant at first when Marina arrived at his farm. He had been content with his simple life, but now everything seemed to be changing. He had already lost his peace of mind, and the last thing he wanted was to take on Marina's burdens. But when he saw the sadness in her eyes, his heart softened, and he agreed to let her stay. At first, life with Lukas was different from anything Marina had experienced before. The simple rhythms of farm life, the hard work, and the fresh air brought a sense of peace that she hadn't known she needed. But as the days wore on, she began to see the cracks in their relationship. Lukas, despite his kindness, had his own struggles. His love for his wife, Eva, was unwavering, and the tension between Lukas and Marina grew as he tried to balance his old life with the new one she had brought into his world. Marina, on the other hand, found herself growing restless once again. Lukas's love and attention, though genuine, couldn't fill the emptiness she felt. She needed more. She always needed more. One evening, as Lukas worked in the field, Eva returned early from a visit to her family. She had expected to find Lukas in the barn or at the market, but instead, she found him sitting with Marina in their small kitchen. The sight of the two of them together, sharing a quiet moment, felt like a slap in the face to Eva. For a moment, Eva stood frozen in the doorway, her heart pounding in her chest. She had always trusted Lukas, never once suspecting that he might betray her. But now, as she watched the way Marina looked at him, something in her heart broke. Eva's voice trembled with emotion. "Lukas? What is going on here?" Lukas quickly stood up, a look of guilt crossing his face. "Eva, I didn't want you to find out like this." Marina, sensing the tension, stood up as well. "Eva, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." But Eva's pain was too deep. She had trusted her husband completely, and now it felt like everything had been ripped away from her. "So, this is what's been going on behind my back?" she asked, her voice steady, but filled with sorrow. "You've been with her this whole time?" Lukas didn't know how to answer. His heart ached for Eva, but his feelings for Marina were growing stronger by the day. "I didn't want to hurt you, Eva, but You've already hurt me," Eva interrupted, her voice breaking. "You've hurt me more than I can explain." Tears filled her eyes as she turned and walked out of the house. Lukas stood there, rooted to the spot, as he watched his wife leave him. Marina stood behind him, her expression unreadable. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no comfort to give. She had no words to offer, no com She had wanted Lukas's attention, but now, seeing the pain she had caused, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of regret. In the days that followed, Lukas found himself torn between two worlds. He loved Eva with all his heart, but his feelings for Marina had grown stronger than he had ever expected. He had never been the type of man to let his emotions take control. But with Marina, it felt as though everything had changed. Eva had left, taking their children with her, and Lukas was now alone. He spent his days working on the farm, but his mind was never at ease. Marina, sensing his confusion, tried to comfort him, but her presence only made things more complicated. She needed Lukas, but Lukas needed something more than just her beauty and her charm. He needed peace. Lukas sat one evening on the porch of the farmhouse, staring out at the fields. Marina came and sat beside him, her hand resting on his arm. "Lukas, I'm sorry," she said softly. "I never meant to cause so much pain, but I can't stop myself. I don't know how." Lukas looked at her, his heart heavy with regret. "I love Eva. I always have. But I've made a choice, Marina, and now I have to live with it." Marina's heart sank as she realized that Lukas's feelings for her were not enough to keep him. She had never considered that he might choose the life he had with Eva over the whirlwind of emotions she had brought into his life. The silence between them grew. Lukas stood up and walked into the house, leaving Marina behind. She sat there, feeling the weight of her choices and the emptiness they had brought. As time passed, the reality of their situation became clear. Lukas and Marina were trapped in a relationship that neither of them truly wanted. Lukas, though he loved Marina, found himself wishing he could return to his old life with Eva. Marina, for all her beauty and charm, found herself longing for a happiness that seemed impossible to achieve. One evening, as they sat in the small cottage, Marina looked at Lukas with a sense of finality in her eyes. "We can't keep going on like this," she said quietly. "This, whatever it is, it's not enough for either of us." Lukas nodded, his heart heavy with the same realization. He had lost everything that had once meant something to him, and Marina, despite all her beauty, had only brought him more heartache. The story ends with both of them, broken and alone, reflecting on the choices they had made. They had chased after beauty, excitement, and power, but in the end, they had lost everything that truly mattered.